Welcome to Talking Kootenay Books. My name is Keith Powell. I'm your host, and today our guest is Robert Hawkins. Robert is here to talk about a book that was actually written by his wife, and we're going to explore how that all went together and maybe some of the background on that. So Robert, what's the book?
It's Until the Moon Is No More.
Okay.
We see a copy of it right here.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that in, and I look forward to talking to it. So let's give people a little bit of a profile, an idea who E.A. Hawkins was.
Okay. Annette was, that's the A.
Right.
Annette was my wife. She passed away a little over 6 years ago.
Right.
And she was a working woman, a housewife. She would probably hate me to say this, but she had a grade 9 education. Mm-hmm. But through her life, she managed to focus and write a novel, which was amazing.
Right. Well, I knew Annette personally, and fantastic lady, and she always seemed to me to have a very humble spirit, and wanted to, but yet a drive that she wanted to accomplish things. And you were explaining to me how the book went together and how long it took Annette to write it, and so forth. So let's just explore a little bit about that. How long did it take her to write it?
Well, she began writing it. It had been sort of a lifelong ambition, I think. Well, at least for her adult years. Mm-hmm. Probably 35 or more years ago, and it was just something that she plugged away at. She, in fact, wrote a first draft, if you will. Mm-hmm. That took many years. Yeah. And then we moved a few times in the interim. Somehow, somewhere along the way, she lost her manuscript. Totally gone. I shouldn't say totally. There probably were a few scraps and bits around in notebooks and things that she had written by hand or maybe had typed out and printed. But primarily, mostly it was gone. She had to start from scratch.
Oh, wow.
That was after probably 10 years of work on it. And she did, and she plugged away. Her health was getting worse and worse. She had been diagnosed with a terrible, rare form of cancer that worked very slowly, and so as the years went by and her health diminished, it became more of a challenge for her to write. But in some ways, it actually opened up a door of opportunity, because she couldn't work anymore, really, and so she concentrated a lot on the writing.
Right. So I'm just going to ask you, she worked at it diligently for a long time.
Yes.
It was obviously something that was near and dear to her heart. She wanted to accomplish that. She never did see it get published, though she put the wheels in motion, correct?
She put the wheels in motion. She arranged to have it self-published. We both sort of worked together on that part, although it was her initial impetus to put that into effect. There was a lot of writes and rewrites, and it was a self-publishing company that we worked through, and they suggested all sorts of, you better rewrite this, and this needs to be cut down, and lots of advice like that, which was very helpful. Made for a lot more work. Yeah. But yeah, so there was a lot of that. Yeah.
Okay. So let's actually talk about the story for a moment. What's the name of the book again?
Until the Moon Is No More.
Okay, so give me the setting and maybe just a bit of the premise as well.
It's set, the story begins in the late actually I think her first chapter is 1952. She titles it that way. And by that time the protagonist is a young girl, probably getting close to her teens, and it's set in this Kispiox Valley, just north of the Hazeltons, up in north central BC. Okay. Beautiful valley, just a great rural place, large indigenous population, and there's a
Annette was familiar with that area?
Yes, yeah. She was born and raised. She was born at the Rynch Memorial Hospital in the Hazeltons. and spent her childhood there on the farm, back up the valley, and then ended up moving over to Terrace, and then ended up getting married, not to me, but to her first marriage, to an Indigenous man, and that didn't stick, unfortunately, for them, but it was benefit for me.
Right. So when were you married?
We were married in '79.
Okay.
And
so had Annette.
Or sorry, I'm confusing.
Okay.
We were married in '77.
Okay.
But we had our first child in '79.
Okay. Okay.
Our only child.
Yeah. So was Annette working on the book previous to that, or was that something that happened after?
No.
You were married?
I can't tell you that she wasn't formulating something in her mind, because it was sort of a lifelong thing for her. But she didn't put any pen to paper until probably we had been together for at least 5 years or so. So yeah.
Okay. So she worked on the book for 35 to 40 years.
Decades.
Decades. Why do you think it was so important for her to tell this story? Why did she want to tell this story?
She was a very artistically inclined person. Not only did she write this book, which was a major accomplishment, but she also did pen and ink drawings, and she did a little bit of not much, but a little bit of sculpting, kind of like with clay and whatnot, that sort of thing. So yeah, it was just kind of part of her. She played guitar. She just had an artistic soul, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was a creative outlet for her.
Yes, absolutely, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was her writing habits like? How diligent was she? Would she write every day, or would she write for a while and then take a break, or how did that go?
In the beginning, it was very much the latter, the writing a bit, and then it sat in the shelf for a while, and then get back at it, and then walk away from it again, and that was, and that's probably how we were discussing earlier, that she actually wrote pretty much the entire novel, and then lost her manuscript.
I can't imagine what that would be like.
To this day, we don't know how it happened or what we did, or anyway, it was gone.
Right.
Other than a few scraps and bits that she had laying around. So she had to restart, and that was as her health was getting worse. Now at that point, she would just dig in and write for hours at a time. Actually, a bit of a detriment to her health, I would say, because she worked too hard at it. But it was her passion.
Right. So let's go back to that original question. Why do you think it was so important for her to tell this story, and she wanted people to know about it?
She had deep feelings about her childhood life, which this is in no way biographical, certainly not autobiographical, but she wrote about what she knew, and so a lot of the things in there are very real. Some of them are contrived, as any novelist will do, but a lot of it is very real to her personal experience.
The sense I got of going through the book is there's a real sense of place here. You feel that you are part of the geography that where she lived, and what she was going through when she was facing a number of challenges and so forth, and so she was able to really, in my mind, project that in a realistic form. Is that based on her experience then?
I would have to say yes. That certainly wasn't my experience, because I grew up in a very different place. But everything that we talked about, she actually knew some of the Indigenous language from there, having been married to one of the members of the band and been in close connection with them. So there's a lot of that in there. Two, she was very much a person who saw the broader humanity as one family, if I can get kind of philosophical about it. And that's one of the reasons why there's so much discussion of racial and cultural differences in this book. That was something that she wanted to explore.
Right. Okay. interesting insight. Robert, just tell us a little bit more about the story itself without giving us the whole plot,
Well,
or giving away any surprise endings or anything like
I'll
that.
probably be bad at this, but okay. The premise is a young girl who's brought up in a home where she's lost her mother at birth.
Yeah.
So she's been raised by her father and subsequent stepmothers,
Right.
you know, and as the book opens, she has a particularly nasty stepmother who treats her very poorly, and so things go bad. But she, through the course of the story, she meets a Japanese man who has been fighting with the problem of World War II, the dislike, the prejudice against Japanese folks because of the war in the Pacific.
Yeah.
And
the internment camp.
The internment camps.
Yeah.
BC has quite a large history, as well as southern Alberta with that. One of the things that I was kind of chief cook and bottle washer on this project. I wasn't the writer, as we're explaining, but I was kind of the researcher and the background guy.
Right.
So we went to the Nikkei Memorial Center over in New Denver as part of a research thing. I would recommend that to anyone. Amazing
museum.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course Lethbridge has a lot of history that way as well, over in Alberta.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of that involved.
Yeah, good. Robert, if you wouldn't mind, just take the book for a moment and just read the back cover. I just thought that was really quite revealing.
Okay. It's referred to, I see how they've put it here. I didn't really notice that until just this moment. Historical romance. So, Harris, a young Gitxsan man, is the love of Nettie's life. Will he disappear like her Japanese caretaker, leaving her in the hands of an abusive stepmother? Nettie must find a place to escape to. Her love for Harris spurs her into action. So as you can see, it's a lot of romance involved there. And Annette E.A. Hawkins was born in the Kispiox Valley of British Columbia and raised there on a small farm. For a time, she lived in Old Hazelton among the Gitxsan people. This is her first novel, her first and only novel, I should say. She passed away in 2018 due to complications resulting from a decades-long battle with a rare endometrial cancer.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Robert. So let's just talk about the fact that Annette worked so diligently on this book for so long, and then you stepped in and actually made it a reality. Did you do that as a tribute to Annette? Did you do it because, maybe let's just explore the reason why you got involved at that point in time. Good.
She started the ball rolling down the hill. Again, I had mentioned earlier that I found out that she was doing this when the check cleared the bank. but I was totally in favor of it, and I really supported it as well. And she wanted to get it done before her health got too bad, but that wasn't to be. And then after she passed, this was sitting there in my hands. My own story is that it took me a couple of years to get past the emotions of it. But now, 6 years on, I kind of realized that I'm better now. I'm okay.
Yeah. And you're ready to take on this project.
Ready to do it. And so, and I will say that the publisher we used, they were very diligent in keeping in touch with me over the years because they wanted to wrap up the project, get it off the books, I guess you'd say. And so they stayed in touch with me, and I finally, like I say, came to that point where I could do it. That was only a short while ago. It was back this year in the summer.
So you were talking 2024, right?
Yeah, this year. Yeah, and I said, let's just do it. Let's push it through, get it done, and
Voila, you've got a book.
And voila, there it is.
So let's just talk about the actual, this is a self-published book.
Self-published book.
Annette obviously wanted it, but the original manuscript, I understand, was quite a bit longer than it is, and yet it still ended up being a substantial book, over 400 pages. So tell me that process. Tell me what it was like to work with iUniverse.
Yeah, iUniverse was the publisher. They were good. A commentary on on self-publishing companies.
Yeah.
They, you know, they're in business, and they're in business to sell services. And you know, we didn't have the resources to do this and do that, and all, you know, because they want you to upsell and upsell and upsell. Mm-hmm. So I suppose we were a disappointment to them on one level, but still, you know, they were helpful. They were professional, and we got it done. As you said, it's actually almost 500 pages. Mm. It was considerably longer. It was probably 50% longer than that, and they suggested all sorts of edits.
So were you involved in that, or was that?
Not in the editing.
No.
I was actually partially responsible for it being too darn long, in the sense that Annette would be asking me to be her researcher and, you know, find out information about this particular thing or that particular thing, or, you know, something about World War II or something about, you know, anyway. So I was busy gathering information and then providing it to her, and she was so busy including it all to the point where this thing became bloated. And so she had to shave down, I think it was like 25,000 words or more to bring this down to even a semi-manageable level. Right. It's actually, the story is on multi-levels. There's many dimensions to this. Both the romance aspect, the history aspect, the race and cultural relations, both good and bad. Yeah, so it's a very, very complex, I would say, story in many ways.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that going through. Actually, it sort of looked at things from a number of different angles, and introduced a number of interesting characters. Do you think that was something that Annette was really keen on, sort of portraying? Is that, you know, there was this interrelationship with a whole lot of people?
Absolutely, absolutely. She, as I mentioned earlier, she always saw, she just had a broader view of humanity. She didn't have any narrow focus in that way. She saw all people as having the potential to be good, but sadly also the potential to maybe not be so good. Right. But you know, but that's humanity.
And so the book is really a reflection of you know, her personal view and the way that she sort of looked at the world. But it's interesting that she was able to carry that out in a novel form, in a story form.
If I could add,
sure.
Her probably the writer that she looked up to the most, who she perhaps emulated to some degree, is the British writer Katherine Cookson, who is well loved in Northern England. She was sort of from the Newcastle-on-Tyne area in Northern England, and she really liked the fact that she was a storyteller, but I think she also liked the fact that Katherine also didn't have a lot of education. I would almost say that her and her husband, we were almost a bit of an echo of that in the sense that Annette had all the storytelling and all the writing ability, but I was kind of the support on the side, you know. And that's kind of what happened with Katherine Cookson and her husband. I think he was a school teacher or something of that nature, and so he would assist her in similar things, you know, research and maybe grammar corrections. I didn't do any much of that, but.
So the iUniverse experience, did they actually help with the design of the book and the proofreading of the book and that kind of thing?
They were the ones, and again, this falls back to me being kind of an emotional mess. So they're the ones who I asked them to take this by the horns. They put the cover on it, and those sorts of things. So yeah, they kind of decided on the physical put together, and Annette had already done the editing down and so on. So
Right.
yeah.
So who's going to enjoy this book, Robert?
I think a lot of people, quite honestly. It does have a lot of history involved in it, sort of 20th century history.
Sounds like thank you to you.
No. Well, I mean, again, in terms of the research, maybe, but I think to a reader who's interested in history, that's a big plus, and I think they'll get a lot out of that. Anyone who appreciates nature, I think, as you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of identity to the place there. Mm-hmm. It's also very much a romantic story. So the people who are into a romance, a good romance, but without giving a lot away, it's also has a tragic ending. So there's drama and that in there as well. So I think it'll appeal to a broad spectrum, really.
Yeah, which is a good thing for a book. And again, a tribute to Annette that she was able to, have her focus and stay with that for so long. And how do you think she'd feel now that the book is out?
Oh, she'd be very proud. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she'd be very proud of it finally coming to fruition. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping I'm what little ability I have to try and promote it. And once I finally get my copies, we were talking about that earlier, I'm still waiting for I had to buy this one. But when my copies arrive, this is only very freshly published in the last, only a few weeks, really, not long at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll be probably donating one to the library, maybe even another library or two in the area. Just also one up to the Hazelton, maybe to the band council there, or the. I think they'll approach this maybe on some thin ice, because it's a sensitive topic, race relations and so on. Yeah. So, but I think they'll appreciate it.
Yeah.
And people up there, they know her, like that's where she grew up. So there are people up there that are still aware of her.
Right. So you will be out marketing the book, promoting the book a little bit. I mean, that's a full-time job in itself. But
you know that better than anyone.
But you're ready to get out and just market the book a little bit. Yeah,
that really is still very much something in process, because I have to make some decisions about how much, because it's self-publishing. So how much do you invest, without losing the house? So yeah.
Okay, so it's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah. So if people wanted to read the book, how do they access it? How do they find it? That kind of thing.
It is available currently on most of the major online booksellers, Amazon, Chapters, I think Goodreads, most of the major online booksellers. And most of them also have it available as an ebook platform. I know it's, some of my friends and family have bought it in the Kindle format. I believe it's also available in the Kobo format and so on. Right. So it's easily accessible.
Right. And at some point in time, it sounds like you might be getting some print books that might be available at local bookstores, that kind of thing.
We're hoping.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a future.
That's a future project. Hopefully not too distant in the future, but yes, that's.
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm just wondering, Robert, 4 decades putting the book together. Yeah. I've run across a lot of people that said, boy, I'd like to write a book. Most people would spend 40 years doing that. But reality, do you not see Annette as an inspiration to a lot of people that say, I'd like to write a book?
Well, I would like to think so. Not even just write a book. I mean, obviously that's the topic here, but just whatever you do in life to persevere and I think most things can be accomplished if you're dedicated enough and stick to it well enough. Yeah.
And you saw that every day when you, in Annette, she was very determined.
Well, Annette was a very determined person, period. I mean, almost to a problematic point, but that's another story. but no, she was a very determined person, had a very strong-willed person, and I think that speaks to why this thing finally got done. From her point of view, she just kept plugging away.
Right.
Yeah.
And while it's not her life story in a novel, there are some parallels to her early life and the situation that she may have found herself in, or even the circumstances or the location that she was at. So there is, obviously she was writing somewhat about what she knew, right?
That's the point. She wrote what she knew, and we actually had that discussion a number of times. There were a few times when she was writing, she would ask my opinion, and she would be tending to go off topic from the story that she had originally presented to me, and we would discuss that, and my advice always was write what you know, because if you start writing all these things about, you're trying to include too much, it's either going to come off wrong or it'll sound invalid. So although like I say, this is not biographical or certainly not autobiographical, it is things that she encountered in her life, and that's the best kind of way to write. Write about what you know.
Sure. So what kind of research did you help her with?
Oh, all sorts of things. Like, as I mentioned, like World War II stuff. So we'd look up internment camps. We did the trip to the internment camp museum over in New Denver. Getting all sorts of books from the library. Buying books on the subject, and then of course she had her own personal knowledge of the indigenous culture up there, so there was a lot of that. I did a lot of stuff on. She wanted to include things like the main character Nettie writing or making cheese, because part of the story is about her learning to be independent, living in this cabin in the woods kind of thing. Well, a lot of these things, like cheese making and leather tanning and all kinds of things. I was finding all this information, and she was actually including it in the manuscript. And through some proofreading, I had to say, look, I did this for you, but you don't need to put that in there. It was too much.
Right. So that's some of the 25,000 words that came out.
Oh boy, yeah, pages and pages. But her own expertise, her own life experience of living in that region, the people that live there, the cultural differences of people living there, that's all kind of her knowledge, her experience.
Wow. And it's really reflected in the story, and good on Annette.
Yes.
Congratulations, and congratulations to you, Robert, for taking it to the next step and actually getting it done. And it is a tribute to your dear wife. She was a wonderful person, and I'm glad you were able to take it that next step.
Yes, thank you. And I would give the credit to her. For me, it was just a matter of, putting a stamp on the envelope kind of thing. So it was all about her.
Yeah, good. Wrap it up, Robert. Name of the book again?
Until the Moon is No More by E.A. Hawkins.
Right. Thank you for being a guest. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you giving us some insight into Annette. She was a wonderful person, and I'm really appreciating the fact that she took the time and you took the effort to make this a reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been Talking Kootenay Books, and my name is Keith Powell.